Valerian Freehold. The term Valerian Freehold refers to the area of land controlled by the Valerians on the continent of Essos. Centered around the city of Valeria in the eponymous peninsula, the Freehold was the greatest civilization of its time, and at the height of its power covered over the known world. The Rise of Valeria. Fought to initially be a modest community of shepherds, the Valerians rose to prominence 5,000 years ago after they discovered dragons living in the Fortean Firs, a string of volcanoes in the mountains of their homeland. After taming the might bears, the Valerians used them to conquer surrounding lands of the Valerian Peninsula, and began expanding outwards. The Giscari Empire, located on the opposite shore of Slaves Bay from the Valerians, was the first major power to face them in battle. Seeking to out Valerian expansion, the Giscari declared war on their neighbors. Massive legions of Giscari Slav soldiers marched against Valeria in a series of 5 major wars, but each time they were defeated. The Freehold's forces then marched on the Giscari capital of Giz and lied west to it, leaving little more than a soldering room behind and nearly eradicating the Giscari people and culture from history. Afterward, the Valerian Freehold became the dominant civilization in the known world, with its own language, religion and customs. The Freehold founded a number of colony cities, connected by a network of roads all of which led back to the capital city. Several of these colonies in the west became the Free Cities. They eventually came into conflict with the Rhoynar city-states along the Rhône River, leading to the Rhoynish Wars. The fighting culminated about 1,000 years ago with the defeat of the Rhoynar and destruction of their cities, with the survivors fleeing a mass migration led by Nymeria, whose refugee fleet eventually settled in Dorne in Suchester Westeros. A few centuries ago, one of the great families of Valeria, the Targaryens, established the fortress of Dragonstone on island of the coast of Westeros, using it as a trading outpost of the Valerian Freehold. The Dawn and Aftermath. For nearly 5,000 years, Valerian supremacy remained uncontested. However, a cataclysmic event known as the Dawn, a massive volcanic eruption of the Fortean Firs, laid waste to the Valerian capital, its people, and the surrounding lands. The Valerian Peninsula itself was shattered and the ocean came seeping in, becoming the Smoking Sea. Dragons, as well as Valerian recorded history, cells, and knowledge were lost. With its center of power destroyed, the empire collapsed. Of the mighty families of dragon lords who ruled the Freehold, only House Targaryen survived, as it had established Dragonstone far across the narrow sea years before the Dawn. The surviving colonies of the Valerian Freehold split up into rival independent city-states. In the west, they became the Free Cities. In the east, the conquered Giscari cities of Slaves Bay reasserted their independence, but 5,000 years of Valerian domination had swept away most of their original culture. With the Heartland of the Freehold destroyed, its surviving colonies to the west and east reasserted their independence, politically fracturing the continent and initiating a series of savage wars for dominance known as the Century of Blood, during which volunteers attempted to reform the Valerian Empire under their rule, but ultimately failed. Several of these colonies formed into the Free Cities in the west, and the cities of Slaves Bay in the east. The Valerian Peninsula itself in the center remained devastated and largely deserted. Meanwhile, without the Valerians and their dragons to keep them in check, the Dothraki mounted hordes swept across the continent from the central plains of the Dothraki Sea, plundering and carving out new domains from surrounding areas. From the Dothraki point of view, the Dawn started their own golden age of conquest and expansion. In the far northwest of Essos, the hidden city of Braavos, founded by escaped Slavs who fled Valeria, now revealed itself to the world. While the other Valerian colonies were left in chaos, Braavos was an island of stability because it had no political or economic ties with the Freehold, and quickly rose to become the most powerful of the Free Cities. The ruins of Valeria in the Smoking Sea remain and are considered to be cursed by other civilizations. Some believe that the Dawn still rules Valeria, inhabiting it with demons and preventing anyone from ever entering the ruins and emerge alive. In response to the disease known as Grayskull, the cities of the east send those most affected by the plague, known as the Stone Men, to the ruins of Valeria to die. The advanced disease means that few, EFN, of the Stone Men retain any lucid thought, becoming monstrous creatures who attack any who wander through Valeria. Cities. Ruin Cities, Old Valeria, Tiria, Oros. Surviving colonies in the Free Cities, Lorat, Lige, MYR, Norvos, Pentos, Coor, Tiroz, Volantis, Valezar, Celiores, Voluntaires. Surviving colonies in the Valerian Peninsula, Mantares, Eleria, Tolos. Surviving cities in Slaves Bay, Meeren, Astapor, e Unkai. 8,000 BC on the eastern continent of Essos, the ancient Giscari Empire flourishes on the eastern coast of Slaves Bay, one of the oldest, if not the oldest, great civilizations in the world. The Giscari Empire is built on large scale slavery of conquered peoples, who toil away to build the great pyramids of old Giz and its colonies. 6,000 BC on the western side of Slaves Bay, a race of peaceful shepherds find dragons lying in the fortain fires, a immensity of volcanoes extending across the neck of the Valerian Peninsula. The Valerians tame the dragons with magic and begin expanding their influence into the rest of Essos. 6,000 5,000 BC in the Giscari Wars. Inevitably, the expanding Valerian Freehold comes into conflict with the Giscari Empire over which superpower will dominate the continent. They fight a series of 5 great wars, ending with the Valerians throwing down the Giscari in defeat. Old Giz is burned to ashes with Dragonfire and never rebuilt. The Valerian Freehold absorbs all of the Giscari's former territories to the east, including all of the Giscari colony cities in Slaves Bay, as such as Astapor, Yunkai, and Meeren. 700 BC in the Rhoyniches Wars. The Valerian Freehold begin settling the region of the modern Free Cities. Their expansion brings them into conflict with the native inhabitants of the region surrounding the River Rhône. Nymeria, the warrior queen of the Rhoynar, realizes that they cannot stand against dragons and they fly to Dorne, in southern Westeros. Der Nymeria marries Lord Mors Martell and Elps House Martell conquer the rest of Dorne, finally unifying the region as one kingdom. 500 BC in revolting Slaves take over the Valerian fleet they were being transported in, and use the ships to fly from the Valerian control areas of Central Essos to the northwestern corner of the continent. There they find a secretive lagoon protected by mountains and narrow access channels, where they found the secret city of Braavos. 200 BC in the Valerians annex Dragonstone, an island in the narrow sea just of the eastern coast of Westeros. The Targaryen family takes control of the island, which is used as a trading post with the Seven Kingdoms. According to legend, Aenar Targaryen had a vision of impending catastrophe and arranged to have his family removed from the Freehold. 100 BC, the Dawn of Valeria, in the Fortean Fires erupting a titanic explosion that obliterates the Arclan of the Valerian Freehold. Most of the Valerian dragons, who in the volcanoes when not needed, are killed or tricked. The city of Valeria is partially buried under vast amounts of ash. The Valerian Peninsula fractures and breaks apart. A large part of it is torn away from the mainland, low-lying areas are flooded and many offshore islands are formed. The waters around Valeria remain poisonous until the present day. 100 BC, 2 AC, in the century of Blood. In the aftermath of the Dawn, Valeria's outlying colony cities began breaking away and asserting their independence, becoming the 9 free cities. The following 100 years a chaotic free-for-all of almost constant warfare between them, also known as the Bleeding Years. Vorse, without the Valerian dragons to keep them in check anymore, the Dothraki mounted hordes spilled out of the central plains of Essos to sweep across most of the continent, in their first great wave of pillaging. For a time the Dothraki sacked cities at will, until their attacks were finally checked at the Battle of Koor. Raids would continue afterwards but never on the same scale. Paralleling the free cities to the west, east of Valeria the Giscari cities of Slaves Bay also reasserted their independence. Towards the end of this period, Volantis grew enough in strength to try to conquer and unite all of the other free cities, but Volantis was ultimately defeated. Afterwards, the free cities settled into somewhat more stable political patterns, just as Aegon Targaryen was uniting the Seven Kingdoms in Westeros. In the books. In the A Song of Ice and Fire novels, Valeria had no single ruler and was neither a kingdom nor empire, officially, all of the Freeborn Landholders, a Freeholders, had call same government, and the formal name of their civilization was the Valerian Freehold. In practice, however, this meant that the Freehold was essentially an oligarchy, run by wealthy noble families. There are about 40 sant families of wealth, high birth, and strong sorcerer's ability. Known as Dragon Lords, they were the ones that owned dragons and tended to dominate the rest of the population. The Targaryens were one of these families, but far from the most powerful. Because this situation of powerful families was de facto rather than de jure, the Dragon Lord families were not noble houses as the Westerosi understand them. The Freehold not only conquered the Giscari Empire, but also the city-states of the Rhoynar people established around the Rhône River, leading to that people's exodus across the sea to Dorne. The modern free cities, as well as several other cities to go to Essos, were established as Valerian colonies and became independent after the Freehold was shattered. The major exception to this is the free city of Braavos, located in the extreme northwestern corner of Essos. Braavos was founded by escaped Slaves who fled their Valerian captors, and the city remained hidden even long after the Dawn of Valeria. For this reason, Braavos is too sometimes referred to as the bastard daughter of Valeria. The Valerians had a strong policy of religious tolerance, everyone in the Freehold, from Dragonlord to Slave, was free to believe in and practice whatever religion they chose, as long as they fulfilled their duties and paid their taxes. In fact, some of the free cities were founded by religious dissidents who found the Freehold to tolerate. A law in Saint Measures was basic good governance on the Valerians' part, and also means of keeping their large slave population under relative control, or ideas placated people were less likely to rebel. The Valerians themselves had their own gods, but the masters of Westeros believe that the Dragonlords were so arrogant that they considered themselves above any religious affiliation, including their own.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.